The 1970s were a golden age of soul. Velvet voices, deep grooves, and stories that echoed across dance floors and heartbreak halls alike. Billy Preston was lighting up keyboards with gospel fire.
Where am I gonna go to feel the way I felt inside?
While Donny Hathaway was crafting some of the decade's most aching melodies.
For some.
But behind the spotlight, many stars faced sorrow, silence, or the sting of being forgotten. Number 15, Bobby Taylor, the voice who discovered the Jackson 5 but lost himself. He was the Motown insider who saw the magic in 5 young brothers from Gary, Indiana. Bobby Taylor brought the Jackson 5 to Berry Gordy's attention, but his own career never soared the same way. In 1968, Taylor charted with Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, but by the early 70s, his solo career had stalled. Despite his vocal power, smooth yet pleading, with gospel grit, he clashed with Motown brass over artistic control. Taylor's post-Motown years were scattered across Europe and Canada, recording in obscurity and battling health issues. While others celebrated reunions and legacy awards, Bobby faded into the background. You can almost hear his voice aching in some smoky Vancouver club, pouring soul into a half-filled room. He passed in 2017, far from the spotlight, rarely acknowledged for what he gave the genre. The man who helped launch one of the biggest acts in history was too often left out of the story. And now, we turn to another lost light. Number 14, Linda Jones, the queen of R&B who left too soon. Her voice could shatter glass or your heart. When Linda Jones sang Hypnotized in 1967, she made time stand still. But just as the 70s promised a bigger stage, tragedy struck.
You want me to go?
By 1972, Jones was poised for a major comeback. She signed with Turbo Records and released Your Precious Love, a haunting ballad that climbed the charts. But Linda had diabetes, poorly managed in an era with little understanding or care. She collapsed in her mother's home after a performance. She was only 27. Imagine hearing her voice pour out of a transistor radio in a Newark apartment, rich, aching, fearless. Then silence. Jones left behind one of the most raw, gospel-drenched catalogs of her time.
Remember when a dream appears.
Today, few remember her name, but her style influenced Patti LaBelle, Aretha, and countless others. If this was the sound of spiritual soul, the next artist's story is a lesson in how quickly fame fades. Number 13, Major Lance, the monkey time man who couldn't outdance the past. With his sweet falsetto and signature shimmy, Major Lance brought Chicago soul into the spotlight. His 1963 hit The Monkey Time was a Curtis Mayfield penned smash, and the dance floors never stopped moving. But by the 1970s, Major was struggling. Label issues, legal problems, and addiction began to dim his once vibrant career. He spent time in prison for cocaine possession, at the very moment he could have led the Northern Soul resurgence. Picture a man who once headlined the Apollo now performing for pennies in overseas clubs. Though he recorded into the early 80s, Lance never regained his footing. He passed in 1994, just as younger audiences rediscovered his hits in retro dance scenes. He had the rhythm, the charm, and the voice, but not the machine behind him. From the beat to the blues, the next artist battled the shadows harder than most. Number 12, Little Beaver, the Miami guitar genius who played in silence.
I tried to get myself together. I even got a...
He was the smooth guitarist behind Gwen McCrae and Betty Wright, with a voice like velvet smoke.
Lord knows the words killed me just dead. And she said, Joey.
Little Beaver, real name Willie Hale, had a minor hit in 1974 with Party Down. But his solo career barely scratched the surface of his talent. Working with TK Records in Miami, Beaver's sound was the essence of laid-back funk, but industry chaos, shifting tastes, and the disco wave sidelined his soul jazz style. He faded from the charts and all but disappeared in the 80s. It's said he worked odd jobs, played uncredited sessions, and vanished into Florida's humid haze. Put on I Can Dig It Baby, and you'll hear it. The sadness wrapped in groove, the brilliance that never got its due.
Crying and calling another man's name.
If Little Beaver gave us tropical heartbreak, this next artist sang with storm force power and lived a life to match. Number 11, Betty Davis, the funk queen who walked away from it all.
She's got Betty Davis eyes, she'll turn her music.
She was bold, electric, and unapologetically herself. Betty Davis didn't just push boundaries, she tore them down. Her 1973 self-titled debut was raw, sexy, and decades ahead of its time.
And she knows just what it takes to make it pro.
But the industry wasn't ready. Black radio wouldn't play her. Labels were uncomfortable with her sexuality. Even her marriage to Miles Davis ended under the weight of clashing creative storms.
All the boys think she's a spy, she's got.
By 1976, Betty was done. She left music, moved to Pittsburgh, and lived in near-total obscurity for over 30 years.
She's got Betty Davis eyes.
Fans whispered about her. Crate diggers worshipped her records. But Betty stayed silent until a 2007 documentary brought her voice back to the surface. She passed in 2022, still a cult icon, but never the superstar she should have been. And if Betty was silenced by a world that feared her fire, the next star burned quietly and broke our hearts when we looked back. Number 10, David Ruffin, the temptation who fell too far.
Somewhere there should be.
He had the voice, the tortured, tear-stained cry at the center of the Temptations' golden era. My girl, ain't too proud to beg. David Ruffin's lead vocals defined a generation. But his ego, addiction, and tension with Motown tore it all down.
Let it rain. Oh, yeah.
By the early 70s, Ruffin was out of the group and struggling. His solo work sparkled, especially Walk Away From Love. But personal demons shadowed every comeback. He battled crack cocaine addiction, fell into financial ruin, and in 1991, while attempting a revival, collapsed and died in a Philadelphia crack house. He was 50. The tragedy wasn't just the death, it was how long the spiral had been ignored.
Baby, 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 baby.
Imagine hearing that voice, reduced to whispers in a hospital hallway. If David Ruffin was heartbreaking Carne, the next artist was funk fire that flickered too fast. Number 9. Sylvia, the businesswoman behind the beat who lost her own groove. Sylvia Robinson gave us hits like Pillow Talk, dripping with sensual confidence.
Sylvia?
Yes, Mickey.
But few know she also created the Sugar Hill Gang and launched the hip-hop revolution. By the mid-70s, she was a quiet force in R&B, but her own music was often sidelined in favor of her business acumen. After pioneering rap with Rapper's Delight, Sylvia watched her label, Sugar Hill Records, buckle under lawsuits and financial issues. She spent her final years in ill health, largely uncredited for the vast culture she helped shape.
Sweet stuff.
Sylvia could have been a household name, but history forgot the woman behind the board. As her sound faded, so too did recognition. Until now. And speaking of those lost to legacy, the next entry was a falsetto genius whose final note was silence. Number 8. Philip Mitchell, the soul songwriter you didn't know you knew. If you've ever slow danced to a classic in the dark, chances are Philip Mitchell wrote it. A prolific songwriter and occasional solo act, Mitchell penned hits for Millie Jackson and Bobby Womack. His 1970s tracks like One on One and Star in the Ghetto showcased his smooth falsetto and reflective lyricism. But industry politics kept him in the background. When disco arrived, radio playlists grew shorter, and Mitchell's subtle soul didn't make the cut. He faded from public view, releasing albums independently and touring quietly into the 90s. His name rarely appeared in retrospectives, even as his songs lived on in samples and soul crates. Put on I'm So Happy and feel the tenderness, like late-night headlights on a rain-slick street. He deserved more. Still with us? Because what's next is the quietest tragedy of all. Number 7. Chuck Willis Jr., the son who carried the flame and was burned by it.
My mama told me she didn't like that rockin'.
You know Chuck Willis, the original She's Gone crooner of the 50s. But his son, Chuck Jr., tried to carry the soul tradition into the 70s.
It's a rock and rollin' from 8 to 25. I don't worry. Hang up my rock.
Armed with raw vocals and his father's legacy, Chuck Jr. released tracks through smaller southern labels, often working day jobs to support his dream. Despite clear talent, he was trapped in his father's shadow, ignored by major labels and misunderstood by audiences chasing funk and disco.
Yes, I will wash those dishes.
Eventually, he walked away from music altogether. There's something gutting about that. A man carrying soul history in his veins, only to watch it slip through his fingers.
Because my feet start moving every time I hear.
Now, before we break into the top 6, let's take a soulful pause. If these stories of lost voices and silenced brilliance are moving you, give this video a thumbs up. It helps us keep the memory of these forgotten legends alive.
They said that rock and roll will soon fade away, no matter what.
And stick around. We've still got 6 more emotional entries to come, including one artist whose final performance felt like a goodbye. Number 6, Johnny Bristol, the producer who couldn't produce himself.
Now that we've caressed.
Johnny Bristol was behind some of Motown's most iconic hits, producing for Marvin Gaye, Tammy Terrell, and the Supremes. But when it was his turn in the spotlight, the same machine he helped build left him in the dust. His 1974 solo debut, Hang On In There Baby, was a sultry smash. But follow-up albums were poorly promoted, and disputes with labels left him adrift. He continued writing and producing for others, but the industry never gave him the same spotlight he'd once shined for others. He died in 2004, known mostly among liner note readers and deep-cut collectors. Play Love No Longer Has a Hold on Me, and hear a man quietly pleading for his place in the legacy. But nothing will prepare you for the story behind our next entry. A gospel soulstress whose tragedy stunned even her closest fans. Number 5, Sandra Phillips, the Southern Soul sister the world overlooked. Sandra Phillips had the voice of a storm, soulful, sharp, soaked in gospel. Her 1970 album, Too Many People in One Bed, released by Canyon Records, was fiery, fierce, and feminist before the genre had room for such a voice. But the label folded shortly after the release. The album vanished. No tour, no charts, just dust. She returned to background sessions and stage plays, her dreams packed away like vintage vinyl. Sandra's story is particularly heartbreaking because her music was the future, raw, personal, socially aware. But timing, sexism, and poor promotion sealed her fate. Today, crate diggers and soul collectors whisper about that album like it's a holy grail. You can almost hear it now. Those horns, that voice bouncing off the walls of some long-shuttered southern studio. And if Sandra was the sister left behind, this next star was the brother no one could save in time. Number 4, Timmy Thomas, the one-man band who cried out for peace.
I went on my way. I stopped as usual at our coffee.
Timmy Thomas gave the world Why Can't We Live Together, a stripped-down protest anthem of organ and drum machine, released in 1972.
I was dying inside, but I couldn't bring myself to touch.
It hit number 1 on the R&B charts and crossed over globally. But that haunting, minimalist masterpiece was also a curse.
And I was dying inside to hold you.
Labels didn't know how to market him. Audiences expected more band, less message. Despite a few albums and regional success, Thomas slowly disappeared from the mainstream. He spent years working in education and local Miami music programs, his one hit echoing as both triumph and burden.
Dying inside, I was dying inside, but I couldn't.
Drake famously sampled him on 2015's Hotline Bling, reigniting curiosity. But Timmy passed in 2022, his legacy still unclear to many. He was ahead of his time and paid the price for it. Now, we move from minimalist soul to one of the most lush and tragic voices of the decade. Number 3, Carne, the voice of Philly soul who floated away.
Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Now.
She sang like velvet silk, gliding through orchestrated grooves with elegance. Carne helped define the Philly soul sound with tracks like Don't Let It Go to Your Head. But Jean's story is tangled with heartbreak, not from tragedy, but from quiet erasure. Signed to Philadelphia International, then Motown, she never had a massive hit, despite critical acclaim and vocal brilliance. Industry shifts pushed her out. Her albums went out of print. Her name faded, even as her sound lived on in samples and hip-hop loops. It's the kind of tragedy that doesn't come with headlines, just the slow realization that the world wasn't listening closely enough. She's still with us, performing when she can, her voice undimmed. But her story is one of soulful beauty almost lost to time. And now, the runner-up, a man whose final song felt like prophecy, number 2, Donny Hathaway, the genius who heard too much.
Where is the love you said you'd give to me?
Donny Hathaway didn't just sing soul, he bled it. From A Song for You to Someday We'll All Be Free.
We're gonna say goodbye, but if you really...
His voice carried the weight of centuries. By the late 70s, he was battling severe schizophrenia. He believed people were trying to sabotage his recordings. Paranoia gripped him, even during his sessions with Roberta Flack.
I wish that you would tell me so. Don't leave me.
In January 1979, after a haunting night in his hotel room, he fell 15 stories from a New York window. Many believe it was suicide. Some say it was a cry for help too long ignored.
Fall in love with someone else's love. All I can do.
Listen to Giving Up, and you'll feel it. That ghostly ache, that quiet devastation wrapped in harmony. His loss still haunts R&B. No artist embodied the beauty and burden of genius quite like Donny.
Where is the love?
But before we close, one final name remains, a story so raw, so unjust, it deserves the top of this list. Number 1, Minnie Riperton, the angelic voice. Silence too soon.
Making love with you is all I want.
She gave us Lovin' You, a lullaby of birdsong intimacy and impossibly high notes. Minnie Riperton was a celestial presence in soul, backed by Stevie Wonder and beloved by millions. But in 1976, at the height of her fame, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She fought publicly, courageously, becoming one of the first Black female celebrities to speak openly about the disease.
The colors that you bring, please stay.
But despite her grace and bravery, she passed away in 1979 at just 31 years old. Her death shook the soul world.
Stay with me while we grow old and we...
She left behind not just music, but a daughter, actress Maya Rudolph, and a legacy of light. Imagine a world where Minnie had lived, the records she could have made, the stages she never got to reclaim. Her voice remains eternal, but her time with us was far too brief. From Motown insiders to Miami funk innovators, these were the voices that defined the 70s, and whose silence echoes even louder today. Thanks for joining us on this soul stroll through memory and heartbreak. Subscribe to keep the groove alive and never miss our next tribute. And up next, the unforgettable soul hits of 1976. Click it now and let's keep the rhythm rolling.